When you've never done something, don't expect to be great at it in the beginning. It takes a lot of learning curve. There are people who've been doing things for years and years. It takes years to master something. Don't expect to be successful on the first or second try. If you are, great, that's great. But expect to fail, and then from there, try to learn.
Hello, everybody. It's Jake Stenziano, host of the Wheelbarrow Props podcast, here with my co-host, the multifamily mentor, the coach, the chef, the father of six, the best-selling author, the G-Daddy, Gino Barbaro. Gino, how's it going?
Mr. Stenziano, I'm doing good today, bro. How are you?
Hey, special edition of the Wheelbarrow Props podcast. Today we are taking a deep dive into partnerships. One of the most important things, multifamily is a team sport, and we are going to get down into the nitty-gritty. So, G-Father, kick us off.
This is going to be the partnership framework. We have a lot of students in our community asking me, how did you and Jake meet? How did you know Jake was the right business partner slash marriage partner? And I just said it was a little bit luck, but just a gut feeling. But also I went through a few steps that I want to share with the community, with the listeners today. I want everyone to take out a piece of paper and a pencil because there's going to be a lot of notes in this lesson today. The first thing that I thought when I met Jake, I just saw that he was a really hard worker. He had same core values as I did. So the first thing I want everyone to think out there, what are your core values? What are you aspiring to be? What is your mission statement? And I don't think anybody really thinks of that. We're always looking at what can Jake do for me, but what can I do for Jake? Like, what are my core values? And it took us years to develop core values for our RAND fam. And the first core value for me was really unwavering ethics. I hated working with people that just kept moving the goalposts. I never thought about it. I coined that term a couple of months ago. When Jake tells me he's going to do something, the goalpost is not moved. He's on the 30-yard line. He's not going to the 35-yard line, if everyone understands what I mean by that. He says what he does, and he does what he says. That's the first thing. Create core values. Think about what your core values are. My other core value is Jake is a hard worker. I want my partner to put it all out there because I'm putting it all out there. I'm feeding his family, and he's feeding my family. So everyone out there, take a moment, take a deep breath, dive deep within yourself, and think of what your core values are. What is your mission statement? Our mission statement at RAND, Jake, share our mission statement with RAND.
It's to improve the lives of others by creating communities that allow people to become the best versions of themselves. And I want to piggyback a little bit off what you said a minute ago, because I think the hardest thing is to be honest with yourself. If you're lining up a partner and you've been working together, I think that one thing we had on our side was time, because it took us almost 2 years to get a deal. So we were able to really, get a lot of experience with one another. But the thing that you need to do is be honest with yourself. And if your partner's not being responsive, but you are, or you're seeing these gaps and you're just trying to force it because you just want it so bad, it's better to walk away at that point than try to force it. And really, this is the hardest thing about partnerships. Be honest with yourself. Be objective about the relationship. It's either there or it's not. And as Gino said, it's making sure that those values align, and be honest with yourself. Do the values align? Don't try to fudge it. Don't force the deal, if you know what I mean. I think so many times we want stuff bad, so we tend to overlook things. Be honest with yourself. Play the long game, because partnership, as Gino said, this is a business marriage, and you need to make sure that you get things right on the front end.
And it is like a marriage. It's easy to get in, but it's really hard to get out. Now, if you're looking for a partner for a specific deal, the one-off deal, it might be a little bit different, but you're still tied to that individual, and your credibility and your name is tied to that individual in the deal. So really take a look at that and go take a deeper dive into it. I think the other thing is set up your own goals. Have you sat down and what do you want from life? What do you want from a relationship with a business partner? I wanted accountability. I wanted somebody that I could bounce ideas off of. I wanted somebody who had some money. I wanted somebody who wanted to work hard. I wanted somebody who wanted to be in multifamily. Those are the things that I wanted. Now, Jake, what did you want from a partnership?
Yeah, I think it was, very similar. Was that I was looking for somebody that had, to your point earlier, was someone that had that similar work ethic, because it's hard to find. And it's like finding a good deal, finding a good partner is like the same thing. So many times I had, I don't want to say necessarily partnerships, but business relationships where the other side let me down, either from an ethical standpoint or a work ethic standpoint, or they're unresponsive. And then to Gino's point, you have to have those goals aligned, because if all that stuff lined up, but I wanted to be in Bitcoin or I wanted to fix and flip, the relationship would have failed. So you need to have that vision clear. You need to be going in the same direction, and you need to share those core values, or it's not going to work. And that responsive piece, being responsive, that's just one of my pet peeves. If I'm trying to get a hold of somebody or emailing them and you don't hear from them for 3 days, that is one thing that I just cannot tolerate. It just eats at my soul. So I think that's one of the most important things.
So for us, when I started on my partnership with my wife, we started the Multifamily Zone podcast. And picture this. My wife comes to me. She's excited. Let's start a podcast on family. I said, great. Can you commit to doing one show a week with me? And she said, sure. And she hasn't let me down, and I haven't let her down, but our lives are intertwined. We're constantly speaking about what we're going to do on the podcast. That's the sniff test. If you don't like working with your partner, I love my wife, so I love working with her, right, Jake? But it is a sniff test. I mean, people they want to tolerate their partner. I saw Jake yesterday for about 3 hours worth of recording, worth of talking about deals. It was constant. I spent the weekend with him at the Jake and Gino boot camp. We had a boot camp with 70 students. I did a presentation with Jake. These presentations don't come out of spontaneous combustion. We spent hours. I wish they did. We ain't that smart, right, Jake? But I can't stress this enough. I call it the Gino sniff test. If you don't like your partner, you can't hang out and have a beer with your partner.
Yeah.
Then I think you just have to part ways. I think that's really important. I think there's a couple of things that I like to talk about with a partner. What is your value that you're bringing to the partnership, and what is your partner's value? There has to be some kind of value trade-off there. Also, you have to be able to hire out everything that you can. If you're bringing a partner on and you could hire out that skill set, like underwriting, you don't need a partner just to underwrite a deal. You need a partner for other things. If you're underwriting a deal or you're doing some kind of maintenance work, you don't need that as a partner. You can hire that task out. So it's really important to think about, okay, is this really worth equity, giving away equity? And I think Jake early on caught on to this a lot earlier than I did. You can't give away equity. Equity is what makes you rich. If you can pay that skill out, and maybe illegal. I mean, a lawyer might be a great team member to be on, but if you can pay somebody $150 or $200 or $300 an hour to do some contracts, is that really a partnership?
Don't give a lawyer equity. That's the last person you want to give equity to.
But I'm being serious, Jake. Like, say you pay a lawyer, let's say you pay a lawyer 10 or 15 grand a year. Is that worth 10% of a multifamily deal going forward? I don't know. If the lawyer brings other skill sets on, and he has a book where he has a lot of investors and he can bring that to the table, that's not disputed. I'm not disputing that, but that's important. Two other things with partnerships that are going to really be successful before I give you the successful partnership framework. You have to have what we call L10 meetings. Every week you need to be on a call with your partner. And one of my partnerships 4 or 5 months ago failed because of that. We didn't have weekly meetings. We didn't talk about what was going on. And it was my fault. Take full responsibility for when a partnership fails, because it takes two to tango. So if the deal goes bad or the partnership goes bad, look within, because you did something wrong also. And the second thing is, I'll let Jake expand on that in a second. The second thing is to set priorities. What do you want to do every quarter? Reverse engineer your year, starting the beginning of the year. What does the year look like for you? A successful 12 months. How does that look? Buying 3 deals, securing financing, whatever that may be, starting a podcast, then reverse engineer it and do it quarterly. And then from quarterly, set weekly tasks. And then from there, you're going to start setting priorities for your partnership.
Yeah, what Gino is touching on is, I call it my personal cadence of accountability. And there's certain meetings that I know every week that I have to be on. And it makes the business run. And in addition to that, you need to have your meeting rhythm set out for your team. So there should be a handful of tasks that are repeatable every week, that may be touch-ins with certain members of the team, whatever it may be. And then it rolls up to something larger, which we call our meeting rhythms. There's going to be quarterly plannings. There's going to be a review of what we have. We follow a system, scaling up. It's based on the Rockefeller habits. So we're always looking at ourselves and saying, hey, are we living up to these Rockefeller habits? Are we nailing our meeting rhythms? And there has to be, at the end of the day, for each task, sole ownership and responsibility from one team member. So whatever that may be, if something's getting pulled through, I'll give you an example. We're going through a deal right now, and we're going through our checklist, and there's not 2 people responsible for a task. There's not 2 people responsible for getting the survey. There's 1 person. There may be a supporting cast around that person, and many times there are, but there's 1 person that's solely responsible. And within our our culture and within, our RAND family of companies. We call it extreme ownership. It's one of our core values. And ultimately, we need to make sure that there's one person at the end of the day that's solely responsible or quarterbacking or driving, these different priorities. Because if two people are responsible, no one's responsible. You got to have that one person responsible. You need to have a quarterly, a weekly, and a daily rhythm schedule in place. And for your personal side, have that cadence of accountability. I have a meeting with my wife every Sunday morning. That is on my cadence of accountability. We don't miss it. It's something that we've started implementing over the last few months. It's been phenomenal. But this trickles into life, your personal life, your business. It's having a well-oiled machine wherever you look around, and that adds clarity and simplicity to your life. And I'm telling you, it's work, but it's worth it. It's work that's worth it.
Jake is cracking the whip, my friends out there. So let me bookend what Jake is saying, because it's really important. What we do is we have a daily huddle. Yes, we get on a call every morning. I get on a call with my Jake and Gino team members every morning for 15 minutes. What are our daily tasks to do? If they have any stuck points, any challenges, we want to share our wins with us. We want to share what our daily tasks are, and we share notes. 15 minutes, that's all you need, depending on the size of your team members. Then we do once a week, a weekly huddle with our entire RAND fam. That's really important, because I want to hear from the property management side. I want to hear from RAND partners. I want to hear from RAND Capital, and I want Jake and Gino to really drive that meeting, which is truly important. Then we've just had a state of the RAND fam. We just implemented that because we want all of our companies to know what's going on. We want to be really aligned throughout the whole organization. And we all have weekly L10s, level 10 meetings with each individual companies. And it's really important to have those weekly meetings, because that's where you have your weekly priorities, your quarterlies, and your yearly goals. It's really easy to flush out. Now, I don't want anyone out there to get overwhelmed. This takes time. When you're buying your first or second deal, you may not be there. It's taken us years to get there. But if you want to scale up and really create a business that can really create your lifestyle and create those team members and create that culture and the core values, I think that's important. Start out with the core values. Really start that out with that. Whether you want to have core values for your family, for your business, it's really important. Then the mission statement, and then start thinking about, as you're scaling, you might have one entity. You may have one daily huddle with one individual. You may have one level 10 meeting with a property management company. That's what we did. But that as we started growing those entities, we thought that communication was the most important thing. When there's a lack of communication, that makes a really huge hole in the partnership and in your entities. I think the important thing is take responsibility for your partnership, and take blame when you mess up. Jake,
can I be repetitive for a minute?
Yeah, of course you can.
We say this all the time, but I think there's so much value in it. Education times action equals your results. I think that is the success equation to get into multifamily. That's essentially the price that you're going to pay to get in the door. You're going to have to get educated. You're going to have to take massive action. That will get you your first deal. That will get you your second deal. That will get you your third deal. Once you have those deals, though, everything that Gino just touched on comes back to what we work on and preach all the time: people, systems, and culture. We just went over our meeting rhythms and our cadence of accountability. That's all under the systems umbrella. What has Gino been talking about since the minute he got on the show today? He's been talking about culture. He's been talking about core values. Vitally important. And who are the people doing it? They're the people on the team. They're the RAND fam. You need to have the right people on the bus. So I think it's just, there's such alignment. And you can see this stuff is just oozing out of us because it's what we do every day, and we believe in it, and we've seen the success of it. So I had to get it out there because, I love my people, systems, and culture.
You didn't know there's nothing repetitive about that. I'm glad you brought that up, because you put a nice little bow tie on that. Because if you have a great team member and he's all about the culture and the core value, but he's in the wrong seat, we've done that a lot of times. It's been our fault. It's been our mistake. You need to have the right person in the right seat. That's important. I think, to continue with that is we need to take responsibility, Jake and I, as leaders. Ray Dalio says blind spots and ego are a killer. We're not here trying to find out who made the mistake. We don't want to acknowledge the mistake. We want to acknowledge the solution. So if Jake makes a mistake with part of the business, let's document that, like Ray says, and let's figure that out so we don't make that mistake again. So we're solutions oriented. That's one thing that I think your core value should be. Partnerships and being an entrepreneur is not castigating and not casting blame, not, yelling.
We're coaches at the end of the day. That's really what it is. And that's the thing that people, you can be a dictator, but see how well your employee base responds to that. And at the end of the day, Gino and I are coaches. You
And
know,
what I
either we're coaching employees, we're coaching students, whatever it is, that's what we do.
and the most important thing about that is those empowering questions. I remember one podcast we had, the gentleman said, stop and ask your team members, what do you think about that? Because you're not the one. And as you grow as a leader, the more you become a leader, the less you talk, because you want more input from other people. And then you can put your to it. So you should be the last person speaking and empower your team members to do it. Jake, what do you think about that? Then Jake will say, you know what? He's empowered. He'll think about solutions and then he'll own it. And then I can say, Jake, that's a great idea. We should do that deal.
What do you think the solution is? What would you do?
I would do a lot,
You
my friend.
no, but really,
Yes.
but you want to
Yes.
drive down, because to Gino's point, now the person that came up with that idea is owning the solution. And if you've coached them for long enough, they probably know what you're going to say anyways and what the right move is. So it's going to come almost intuitively. It's a beautiful thing to see in practice.
Yep. I think the next step is once you've created the partnership and you've thought about it, start creating those operating agreements and put expectations on the front end. If we're doing a deal, like Jake said, and Jake's job is to go out to hunt for deals and to look for deals and to put the deals on the contract. That's what we're expecting from Jake. If my expectation is that I need to raise capital and I need to go out there and I need to do investor dinners and I need to do webinars, that's mine. Let's set up the expectations on the front end so nobody's confused. When it doesn't happen, we're not going to be like, ooh, ooh, ah, ah. It's really important. Operating agreement and the expectation, right? The thing is, when you're an IMA mentality, like we were in the beginning, we were doing everything together. So we had nothing. But as you start growing and scaling, you're doing property management. I'm doing education. We're doing syndication. We have investors on board. We're trying to do mortgages. We're doing live events. It's all over the place. If we don't have expectations of what we are staying in our lanes, that's going to be a problem because we're going to be spread too thin. And like Jake said, if we're both doing something, neither one of us is doing it.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. So what do you think about diagnosing the problem, Gino?
Diagnosing the problem. That's a tough one. I mean, that's something, the successful partnership, let's go through that real quick. There's 5 steps to it. The first one is to create the goals. We've already talked about that. So everyone write that down, create your goals. Number 2, let's encounter the problems, identify them, and let's not tolerate them. So number 2 is encountering problems. You're going to have them, right? Number 3 is diagnosing the problem. Like Jake said, maybe you're the weakness. What's going on with the partnership? Are you showing up? And once you diagnose that problem, you can go up for that creative solution. We've been talking about it with your team members.
That's the huge piece, though, because you touched on like the ego factor. And there may be, I think one of the things that we like to do internally is when we see these, different types of personality tests, I think it's a good idea to have those and utilize those amongst your team, because you're going to find each other's strengths and weaknesses. And, it gives you the ability to put people in the right position for success. And it also makes you more self-aware of the best ways to interact with your team members. So I think that's a good way to diagnose some things, because you may be having an issue with a team member, but you may be able to actually solve that problem by approaching them differently, and then you can allow the issue to resolve itself. So I think it's just the key is to be open-minded to whatever solutions are out there to expedite the process.
So what I think Jake is saying that he tends to be a bull in a china shop sometimes. So he tends to be a little bit more dominant, and he'll charge, and that's the way he is, and that's just how he is. But if you have an employee,
I can freak people out, Gino.
That's right. And if you're a person who's a little bit more timid or a little bit more reserved, he might rub you the wrong way, just the way he is. So he's got that self-awareness now.
Don't mean anything by it. I'm just naturally direct.
That's right. And maybe he's got that self-awareness now that that's not the way I have to interact with an employee or with a partner or with a seller or a broker. It goes throughout the whole, the whole gamut in life. When in the beginning, Jake would really be aggressive with the brokers because he wanted to get these deals, and some brokers you can't be that direct. So you have to learn that and look within yourself. That awareness piece is really, really huge. The fourth one,
I would get down to a 3-point stance and attack,
Not much has changed, my friend. The next one, number 4, is design plans to get around the problem standing in your way. This is a tough one because it's really introspective. And what plans do you need to do? Jake and I were going through some stuff with Jake and Gino that we're trying to figure out. We've tried to implement something. It hasn't worked. We've diagnosed a problem. Landing page didn't look good. Marketing was off. We spent too much on Facebook and things weren't working. We didn't blame each other. We just knew that we weren't doing something right. We didn't have the right team members on. We diagnosed that problem. And now we're trying to design plans to do a better job. And it's a long game. When you've never done something, don't expect to be great at it in the beginning. It takes a lot of learning curve. There are people who have been doing things for years and years. It takes years to master something. Don't expect to be successful in the first or second try. If you are, great, that's great. But expect to fail. And then from there, try to learn. And that's why coaching, and that's why investing in your education and investing in somebody who's done it before, a mentor or a business coach, is really valuable. It's invaluable where you can dramatically shorten your learning curve and get somebody on the team who's done it before. I wouldn't hesitate twice. For Jake and I, we waited too long to do that.
I think the natural progression for any entrepreneur is pivot, test, pivot, test, pivot, test, pivot, test. And it's hard for people because they're saying, oh, I know like Josh is like, we're pivoting on this again. And it's like, it's not a bad thing. It's just, we're trying to, we're looking and always in search of excellence and an improvement. And so if it's not working the first time we thought it would, we have to pivot. And sometimes you have to take small pivots so it can be a lot of pivots, because one thing that you can't do is pivot too far, because then you're not able to diagnose. So it's pivot. Maybe it's a small pivot test, small pivot test, because if you do essentially two pivots at once, it can be harder to diagnose and understand what the true problem was as you're looking to improve. So that's one of the hard things especially as you're a nimble, smaller organization and moving quickly. It can be stressful on sort of the whole system, but look, it's just part of it. I think that's the thing people just need to get comfortable with at times.
Mm-hmm. So design is the fourth one. And number 5 is execute. Number 5 is you have to commit and then figure it out. That's what you have to do. You have to execute on what you've said you're going to do. Most partnerships might sit there and go make excuses and not do it. You have to do it. And I'm going to get into the pros and cons of it, but that's one of the pros of having a partnership is we have an accountability piece. So you're not doing it just for yourself anymore. You can slack on yourself, but you can't slack on your partner. At least that's the way you should be looking at a partnership. So that's important. Let me go through them real quick again. Create goals, number 1. Encounter problems, number 2. Diagnose the problem, number 3. Design plans to get around that problem. And number 5, execute. Now, real quick on 4 ways to partner in multifamily. We can talk about that real quick, Jake. I can bullet point them and then we'll get into the pros and wrap it up. But 4 ways to partner in multifamily, this is really important. Multifamily real estate is all about partnering and all about the relationship aspect of it. If you don't have the money, well, guess what? Somebody out there does. You need to find someone who with net worth, or a sponsor to sponsor your larger deals. We did it on our 3rd deal. We found a great sponsor. He's become a partner of ours. He's been an amazing asset. It got us into the game. Net worth and partner and sponsorship is really huge in the multifamily space. The next one is boots on the ground, day-to-day management, asset management. If you are in a market, you don't have that net worth, but you have deals and you know what you're doing, you can be that boots on the ground. You can be that day-to-day. You can be that asset manager. The third one, raising capital for these deals. If you have a great investor network or you just like to go out and network, people need money for their deals. Start raising capital and start partnering with people. That's a great skill set to have. And I think the fourth one, underwriting deals, finding the deals, recruiting investors. That's a really nice skill set also, because if you can find deals out there nowadays and get those deals on the contract, there is a ton of value in this part of the market cycle. Maybe back in 2013, it wasn't as prevalent. There were more deals out there, but there was definitely no capital out there. So I think those 4, write those down: net worth, boots on the ground, day to day. Number 3 is raise capital. And number 4 is underwrite those deals. Those 4 are really important. Now, I want to dive into the pros of partnership because it's really important to figure out why we're getting to partnerships. The first one to me, it was really important, was the accountability piece. I was on an island all by myself. It felt like when I was at the restaurant. My brother was up front, but I had no one to talk to. I had no one to bounce ideas off of. I wasn't getting excited. And to me, it was alone. And the partnership piece to me brought the mastermind to it. It brought me a different idea. It brought me a different perspective on how to look at things, because 4 eyes are much better than 2. Jake looks at a problem or a solution differently than I do when we come together. And just honestly, last week we're sitting in front of the computer and Jake put a lot of work into this PowerPoint presentation. We get on for 30 minutes. I could see the light in his eyes. He was so excited to be on there. And he's like, wow, this is fun now. You're doing it by yourself. It's like a drag. When you get on with somebody and you start spitballing, you start creating this deck, and it's like, wow, now this is coming to it. And you can share that with somebody. that's a lot of fun doing a partnership. That's what it's all about, getting those ideas you didn't think of. And you know
It's
what?
those one or two little things though. Yeah. Like, so Gino comes on, has like, well, let's do it like this. And then, so you're both in tune with each other, and it's a little thing sometimes that can take something to the next level. And I think that's one of the most fun things about it.
I think
even last night we were talking about a deal, right? A deal that
Yep.
we're saying, hey, this might be a solution in terms of the way
That's right. And I never even thought of that. And he's like, well, this might work. And if it doesn't work, great. But it's just another way for the next deal. Exactly. The next deal. The next one is get more done. Let's get more done. When you have a partner, you can get more done. You can start delegating responsibilities. And that brings me to the next one also. Start doing more of what you like. If you like raising capital more and your partner likes to be more of the introvert, maybe you do one aspect of it and your partner does another aspect of it. I think the motivation is really, really key on this also. When you're motivated, you're doing a partnership and you're both super locked in and motivated to do it, that is freaking awesome, because I'm doing now, not only for myself, I'm stepping outside of myself. I'm feeding Jake's family. I'm feeding the Jake and Gino family. So if I'm not a self-motivator, I can use that partnership to actually motivate myself. And like we said, the last one to me, I think, is just having more ideas, having more thoughts, and having the ability to look outside of the box and say, well, what do you think about this, Jake? And we can sit there and we can mastermind ideas. I think that's amazing. You want to add anything to that before I hit the cons?
No, there's so much good, but I think the accountability piece is tremendous because it's just going to have a heightened sense of awareness, because you got to get the stuff done because you're doing it for a cause that's larger than yourself, right? You're doing it for a team and a RAN fam or whatever you got going out there. So I think the accountability piece is huge.
So the cons, number one, trust. It's hard. You have to trust your partner. You have to trust that they're getting the work done. And Jake alluded to it before. If you get that feeling that they're not participating, that they're not coming to the meetings, that they're dropping the ball, that's something that has to be addressed on the front end. If it's a cancerous situation, cut the cancer out.
Walk away.
You want to cut it off on the front end. Number two, you're losing control of certain tasks. If you're an IMA person, all of a sudden you're not doing the bookkeeping anymore. All of a sudden you're not doing certain tasks that you feel comfortable doing. You have to let go. And that's really difficult for a lot of people. I'd say the majority of people on this planet, because most of us are integrators. We're not many very visionaries out there. For the visionary, it's easier to let it go. But for the integrator type person out there, it's really difficult to let that go. And I think the third one is a partner who doesn't fulfill. Partner who's out there who says he's going to do it and constantly drops the ball. That's one of the toughest things about being in a partnership, when a partner lets you down and makes those excuses, right? How do you want to wrap this up, Jake? This has been a lot of content.
No, it's here's the thing though. It's a team sport, and we talk about this a lot. Multifamily is a team sport, and that's what we're hitting on here. But the challenge is, it's a whole nother, piece of the puzzle, is that you got to find a good deal. You got to find a good banker to work with, and you got to find good partners. So you're constantly testing and measuring. And if it's just not there, you have to be willing to walk away. I think that's the key to any of this, because if you try to force it, you're going to get burned.
What I want everyone to do is, down below, leave some questions or comments down below about partnerships. What do you think is a good partnership? What are the partnership tips would you leave to our listeners? What are you struggling with in a partnership? And, what are your pros and cons of a partner? So we've given our framework, and it's continually evolving because we're continuing to bring on new partners. And what I find to be exciting is the more you're willing to partner with people, the more you're willing to make it happen, the more opportunities are going to come your way.
Yeah. Be objective. I think that's the biggest thing, folks. So Gino, I appreciate it today.
Mr. Stenziano, thanks. Everyone, have a make it happen day. Take care, everybody.
See you, gang. Gino, I know a lot of our listeners are wanting to take their multifamily investing business to the next level. I know that you've been hard at work helping Jake and Gino students do just that using our framework. Can you explain to the listeners how they can get our help?
Guys, we've been hard at work growing our community of like-minded investors, and the results of our members has been nothing short of incredible. We're looking to grow this amazing group. What we're looking for is those who want to follow our proprietary framework that we've created: buy right, manage right, and finance right. Leverage our connections, education, and mentorship as ways to take your business to the next level.
So if you're interested in finding out more about how you can become a part of our amazing community, apply to work with us at jakeandgino.com/apply.